Wow, LeBron and Messi further out than I expected. Who else is here? Is that John Cena? What the hell? What is this list? Well, that's got to be on one of. Is that The Rock? Who made this list? A 14-year-old in 2006? Alright, come on, YouTube. You've never let me down yet. This is not at all what I'm asking. I want to know the greatest athlete, not just the greatest moments. So it turns out there are actually a lot of sports, way more than I thought. And I just don't have time to go through all those sports, at least not at this moment. So I'm just going to do team sports right now. I promise I will get to individual sports another time, hopefully. First off, we need to define what a great athlete is. The definition of an athlete is a person who is proficient in sports and other forms of physical exercise. But if you try to look up what is a great athlete, you'll get about 1 million different answers, and that's the problem. It's very subjective. It's impossible to narrow it down to just one phrase. But after hours of research, I've managed to pin down greatness in athletics to 2 qualities: luck and don't worry, I'll get to that later. To be considered great in a team sport, you just gotta be lucky. It's an unfortunate fact, there's no great player who has consistently won at the highest level without other top talent on their team. And it's up to the team's management to provide this, and that's just luck. And in a lot of sports, if the player chooses to leave the club to go to a better one, it's considered a blemish on their career. So it's really a catch-22 situation unless they get lucky. And also, offensive players will always be looked at in a better light than defensive players. You could be the greatest defensive player of all time, but you will still be viewed as if you were Rick Ross with no shirt. However, we can try to measure greatness with accomplishments and stats of a player, but this also has its own problems. Firstly, you can't compare stats across sports. Championships like World Cups and NBA Finals are worth completely different things. And the requirements to win accomplishments such as MVPs and Ballon d'Ors change for every sport. What these accomplishments do have in common, however, is that they are both narrative-driven awards. Aside from the fact that you can win the Ballon d'Or if you're a really good defensive player, it's impossible to win the MVP if you're mainly a defensive player. Like I said, defensive players are looked at as if they were an ugly guy saying you look good. And even if we based greatness off accomplishments, the GOATs would all be players from the 50s. It would just be a conversation between Bill Russell and Pele, but we can justify not having them highly ranked because of their competition. So if stats and accolades don't determine the best, how can we? You see, that's the problem in team sports. It's almost impossible to determine how successful a player is individually because their legacy is completely dependent on how good their teammates were and what era they played in. So is it the most athletic? Now, of course, to be an athlete, you gotta be athletic. And all of the greats are in their own way athletic, but almost none of them are the most athletic person in their sport. So it's gotta be something extra that they have. Greatness in athletics is down to 2 things: luck and mindset. That is the only tangible quality that separates great players from the best. They have to inspire their team when all hope seems lost. They have to encourage them or put the fear of God in them to make them push their boundaries and achieve their best. They have to reassure their teammates and put faith in their hearts because there's still a chance because they've still got them and they won't give up. And if we look across all team sports, this is what all the greats have in common. But what if, despite all I've said, there was a player who, relative to their sport, was perfect, who had the individual stats, the accolades, could bring his team wins, would dominate any era of the sport, who holds the most records in the sport, who was so good that when anybody else accomplishes something, they say, first to do it since them. And that person is Wayne Gretzky. As a mainly basketball and football fan, I really tried to find a way not to justify it being him, but I couldn't. If you just take 2 seconds to look at his accomplishments, it is impossible to argue against. This man in his first 8 years in the NHL won 8 straight MVPs. Bro, I don't understand half his accomplishments. 7 Art Ross trophies. 7 straight Art Ross trophies. Only NHL player to score over 200 points in one season. He did it 4 times. He has more career assists than any player has points. He won 4 championships. And so, just relative to their sport, the greatest player of all time is Wayne Gretzky. But whilst he is extremely accomplished in his own sport and has had a massive impact on hockey, he just doesn't have the influence that other international players have. Wayne Gretzky is a national treasure to Canada. I'm serious, the Canadian government literally intervened when he got traded. But he just isn't an international and generational icon. And so honestly, regardless of how good you are to your own sport, to be the greatest, you just gotta have the greatest influence as well. And so really it only comes down between two athletes, Michael Jordan and Lionel Messi. Michael Jordan inspired a whole generation of people to play like Mike. He made the sport worldwide. Basketball and Jordan go hand in hand. He owned the 90s, and the only time he didn't win in that decade was when he retired. And Lionel Messi, the most complete and greatest footballer of all time. Football is the world's most popular sport, mainly due to its easy accessibility, but nevertheless, billions of people watch and play football. Millions try to play at the professional level. To be the greatest of all those people at sport is a jaw-dropping accomplishment. To have everyone in the world know your name, look up to you, and you to win everything that is possible for someone in their position to win, he has cemented himself as the greatest footballer of all time. Now on paper, these two are very similar, but there's just one blemish on Michael Jordan's career, and that's this man, LeBron James. He is already considered the greatest in basketball by many, and he is by far a more complete player. Whilst his accolades will never hold up to what Michael Jordan did, you can't be the unanimous greatest athlete in the world if there's a constant debate about who's better in your own sport. So in my opinion, the greatest athlete of all time is Lionel Messi. So that's it, cool, we're done. Except we're not. You see, there's another argument to be had. What if the greatest team athlete of all time isn't even born yet? Just think about it. If you tried to build the greatest NFL player of all time, you'd create a tall, strong, quick, agile, amazing IQ, great leader whose body can acclimatize to steroids really easily, behemoth of a man. But the goal of American football is a gangly 6'5" guy. My point is, if you could create a best player for most team sports, he just doesn't exist yet, or he isn't far enough in his career to be acknowledged. But the amazing thing about sport, it's constantly evolving. We're finding newer ways to improve every facet of the game, and every 100 years, we get that one player who can shatter everyone's beliefs. Thanks for watching. There are a lot of sports I wasn't able to include due to my lack of knowledge in them, like baseball and rugby, and I understand a lot of people have different opinions on this specific topic, and what I've said is completely subjective, and if you believe I've missed something, please tell me about it and I'll update the video if you can thoroughly convince me.